right, we're going to call the regular meeting from July 31st to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kusamoto.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar.
Here.
Mayor Hasselbrink.
Here. Can you rise with me, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Edgar, followed by the invocation by Warren Kusamoto.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads as appropriate. Dear gracious and heavenly God, we just thank you here for the proceedings of this council that we may do the people's business. We ask for your blessing for those that are here and those that are watching and those that can't be here. Yes, you just keep them safe. Also, we just want you to help us bless the first responders, those that respond to tragedies and accidents and emergencies, and keep them safe as they go about protecting us. And Lord, we are reminded we live in a fallen world. Bad things happen. We don't always know why they do, but they're all part of your plan. You know, a couple weeks ago, it was a very, very difficult day for a lot of people involved. And I just ask that you will comfort us, that you will heal the hearts of those that are really hurting, and just know that we don't know your plan. We don't know what you have and why things happen to us the way they do. But we do live in this fallen world, and the place that you really designed for us, that we will be there one day and we will have those answers. And so we just ask for your blessing as we proceed on. Amen.
Can you join me down front, please? Whoops. All right, can I bring up Jason Alman and Kim Engel? So the city's been awarded a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Financiers Officers Association. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. And this is a significant accomplishment for the city. So we both want to thank both of you. You're the driving force behind this. And just thank you so much.
Thank you.
You want to
Sure.
say something with that?
I just wanted to thank Kim publicly. She's an integral part of our department, and I couldn't do it without her. This is the second year that we were able to receive the GFOA award, and it is a significant accomplishment for the city. I also thank the council for your support as well, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Congratulations. And now I'd like to bring up the Parks and Recs Commission under Pete Carvajal as the chairman. Come on up. We just came back from the dedication of the bike path over County Creek, so they're dressed more appropriately than we are for that. So the city, exactly. So Parks and Recs makes lives and communities better now and in the future. Parks provide access to the serenity and the inspiration of nature and outdoor spaces, as well as preserve and protect the historic, natural, and cultural resources in the city. So we always urge for our outdoor space. It's just part of being a healthy being. And we'd like to recognize that this month is Park and Recreation Month. So we want to present this to our Park and Rec Department as Park and Rec Month for the City of Los Alamitos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you want to say a couple?
This is the second time you put me on the spot today, but that's okay. I think we mentioned at the dedication a little earlier today that those of us who serve tend to serve a lot of us for the sense of community, and nothing really speaks to communities better than parks. And it's where our children play. It's where we go to rest and we go to get a little exercise and get some fresh air. I was recently overseas, and I heard somebody say that cities either invest in parks or they invest in hospitals. And I think we've kind of overinvested in medical centers in Los Alamitos, and we need to spend a little bit more on parks for our citizens. So thank you very much to the council. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is you.
Only the men are allowed to speak. When the mayor
Okay, and next up is Development Service Director Stephen Mendoza is providing the Coyote Creek Bike Trail update.
I will be taking over for Stephen Mendoza. We just had our grand reopening of our Coyote Creek bike path today. Up on the screen, you'll see the limits of it. We repaved the bike path from Catella Avenue all the way up to about 300 feet shy of Ball Road through the city limits of Los Alamitos. This project started quite a while ago when our bike path was starting to decompose and degrade out there. We would get a lot of calls from people on bikes and all that happened to be owned by the County of Los Angeles and not the city. And so we went through a very long period of getting permits and designing the plans to reconstruct this. In the meantime, we were getting pictures from bike riders showing us how dangerous some of the reaches were for projects. They didn't want to trip and fall. So we constructed the bike path. The county came out just before we did our paving and fixed the slopes along the path so to make those nice and smooth. We went out and ground the existing asphalt down to dirt, and then we repaved. And as a result, we have a very nice bike path now. It's over a mile long. We have bike people that ride very fast on it. We're cruising by. We had, husband and wives, and we have some people go kind of on the slower side of life through there. So it was getting used by all different kinds of groups out there. We're riding along. In the background, you'll see one of the bike bridges that the city put in back in the 80s. That was a phase that we put in just so that people could ride from the ocean all the way north, throughout Orange County up into there. And so the bike path turned out very nice. We paved also on the bike path and also on all of the on and off ramps in there. I do want to point out to Troy that when we're out there, all the bike riders had a big grin on their face. All the joggers didn't seem all that happy. They seemed more in pain. So I don't know. You're in charge of making them smile when they run out there. But we did leave we did leave 2 feet of dirt on the edge for the runners if they want to run on the dirt or they can run on the asphalt. Most of the single runners were running on the dirt path, so it's easier on their feet. There's an example of one of the off ramps that would take you up to, like that one's, I think, Catella Avenue in there. So, very successful project. Construction cost was, just under $300,000. It was part of the Coyote Creek Park that the city started working on in 2005. So it's been a long park and a long way coming, but we had some extra money in the park, and RMC provided the funding for the bike path because we had some left over for the park. And it turned out great, and it was a fun project to work on. And everybody I met out there, when they saw me taking pictures, and they said, "Who are you?" I tell them who I am. They go, "Thank you for doing this." So everybody was a thumbs up, and we heard that out there today too. So it's a good project. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. But
I would just say, again, thank you. I said it out in dedication. I think that the whole city council, we've been fighting for this thing for a long time. Pete Carvajal made mention when we were out there since 2005. So, it came one thing to get the money, the one other part to actually get the project done. And you guys did a great job. So thank you so much. And Brad, to you too. A little bit of trivia for people that want to go look at that bike lane. If you want to know where Long Beach starts and Los Al stops, they had right up to the point we got to the city. And the reason why a lot of people ask me, why didn't you guys go all the way, up past the confluence by where Taco Bell behind that? Because once you invest in the bike path as a city, you're kind of consciously taking it over, and forevermore, it is now one of our streets that we have to maintain. So we needed to make sure that we set clear boundaries, and that's probably the most asked question I get. And the other part is where it ends in Seal Beach. The same time we fixed ours up, their beautiful bike path had some heavy equipment go over it. So they're like, why didn't you fix Seal Beaches while you did yours? And it's a different pot of money. So just a message to the community. We're really grateful for all the work that the city put into it, and thank you. The community really appreciates it. Thank you.
Okay, oral communications. At this time, any individual in the audience may come forward to speak on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Remarks are to be limited to not more than 5 minutes per speaker. Anybody?
Before we start that, I think it should be pointed out that there was a problem posting the agenda on the website. It was posted more than 72 hours before the meeting, actually only required to be 24 hours for an adjourned meeting, but some people were unable to access it from outside of City Hall. Councilmember Wilson was able to access it for a brief period at least, last week. So some people were able to access it. There's an Attorney General opinion on an issue similar to this, and so long as it was posted, first of all in the physical places in town, and second of all, posted on the web where there's a glitch, the meeting can go forward anyway, especially where it was available during some part of the period before the meeting. So I just thought that ought to be clarified before everybody in the audience jumps up and says, why wasn't it posted?
Great, thank you. Okay, back on oral communications.
And I am one of those individuals. My name is Lawrence McMillan. I reside at 11961 Reagan Street here in Los Alamitos. I am here to speak on the issue of the red light camera contract renewal that's scheduled to be heard. As Mr. Reisman mentioned, it was not I discovered that this meeting was even going to happen just yesterday. I just happened to notice it in front of the museum over on Los Alamitos Boulevard. I'm sure not very many people bother to stop and look at that bulletin board there, but I happened to. I looked on the website this morning, no mention of it. I looked at it again 15 minutes ago, or 15 minutes before this meeting started. There was no mention. It's not on the calendar. It's not shown as one of the agenda items. It's not even in last week's edition of the News Enterprise. So in my opinion, I don't know about the Attorney General opinion, but in my opinion, this meeting probably shouldn't even be happening with a glitch like that. But that aside, I'm against the red light cameras, not because I've ever been victimized by them, but they are wrong. They're not really what our law enforcement, our police department should be about. Red light cameras have nothing to do with public safety. Instead, they have everything to do with maximizing revenue. The yellows are deliberately set to be as short as legally allowable in order to maximize violations and thereby revenue. If you really wanted to improve public safety at intersections, there's other ways to do it. You could have longer yellows instead of shorter yellows. You could have a time when the signals are red in both directions long enough to help prevent intersection accidents. So these red light cameras are not there really to improve public safety. What they're really there for is to bring revenue into the city at an exorbitant cost to those who are victimized by them. I mean, we're talking, my understanding is there can be as high as $600 for one of these tickets. Now, you may say, well, we don't get $600, and true enough, you don't. But that's what the victims of these red light cameras have to pay. And that's outrageous. It's unconscionable. It should not be allowed. This Red Flex company is not only out of state, it's out of our country. We're sending money to Australia for tickets that you're giving to people here in Los Alamitos. So I humbly and fervently urge every council member here to deny this contract and to reject it, and let's pull these cameras out just as they've been done in nearly every other city in Orange County and virtually every place in Los Angeles County, where the courts in Los Angeles County have ruled that they can't even be enforced, those tickets. And so they're on very slippery ground legally, and there's certainly not any way to treat the residents and the visitors coming through our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good afternoon. My name is Dean Gross, resident of Los Alamitos. Councilmember Kuzumoto, during his invocation, mentioned the situation that occurred 2 weeks ago at this point. And it was a very unfortunate situation for the individuals that were involved, the two individuals that lost their lives. We struggle as humans trying to ask why whenever there's a death that occurs, and it's something that's very difficult to come to grips with. I'm here tonight to talk more about the other members of our police department who have been grieving significantly since that incident happened, trying to also come to grips, trying to do things and continue to serve the citizens of the community. The business community came together and signed a poster which was delivered last Friday to the police department, hopefully to let the other members of the force know that we still honor what they do, we still honor them, and appreciate the services that they provide. A number of restaurants in the city also stepped up and delivered food that entire week to the PD, again to kind of show that the community does care. The community is just as dumbfounded by what happened as the city is. But on behalf of the businesses in the city, through the Chamber of Commerce, I wanted to let the chief know and have him carry it back to the other members. That, their services are much appreciated, and stay the course. We're behind you. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I'll go ahead and close oral communications at this time and bring it back for council comments. And we'll start with Richard this time.
Thank you. Rather than report on all the wonderful and exciting meetings I'm allowed to attend on the city's behalf, I'd like to take this time to discuss our recent tragedy. No matter what the circumstances, any time you have the death of two people, it truly is a tragic event. And I want to thank and congratulate the chief, Captain Conley, the entire police force, Brett, and the entire city staff for your professionalism. Was outstanding and a credit to both your profession and your city. So we thank you both. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a POA event at the brew house where Joe Maggiore actually closed his restaurant to honor the police. And I think it shows what the community thinks of our police force. And I hope you'll carry that message back. Thank you.
Warren?
Thank you. So I'll kind of second what Councilmember Murphy says about our staff here, and I think they handled it very, as best it can be in these kind of situations, because how do you know what to do until it happens? So Brett, thank you. Chief, thank you for that. And the rest of the staff as well. More mundane kind of things. I was able to attend the Orange County Vector Control District meeting, and West Nile virus is starting to appear in birds, so the infections are out there. Fortunately, nothing local to us. It seems to be in the kind of La Habra area, so I guess like Tustin, North Tustin. So be careful out there. Any standing water, make sure you dump it. I was able to attend the legislative roundtable with Congressman Lowenthal, and Councilmember Murphy was there as well. So we got to do a little question and answer of the congressman as what's going on in Washington, D.C., and how he kind of sees things coming up for our region. And then finally, I did attend the 4th of July fireworks spectacular, but I imagine Mayor will talk a little bit more about that, but that was a wonderful show. And with that, over to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
I want to echo the comments of my colleagues, and thank you for the business community that support. We've gotten a lot of positive calls, people who are very invested in Los Alamitos to know that who their captains are, who their officers are, and the pride in the community that we have. So thank you for those who've reached out and shown the support for our city, for our officers. I know they feel the same way, and you have my support as well, Chief. I also want to say thank you to the staff for the 4th of July event. While everybody gets to take the day off, you guys are out there all day, all night picking up staff, and it's not unnoticed to see so many different red shirts from the city of Los Alamitos out there while our families and the community's families are able to enjoy. So thank you very much for your sacrifice for working on our nation's holiday. I attended meetings as well, and I want to thank the community for coming out to the Olson Company meeting and also for the OCTA meeting also on that same day. And I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Yeah, tough last 2 weeks. So again, Chief and everybody, echoing the comments. I would say that the toughest job during this very tough time for our city would have to be you, Chief. You're the guy on the front line responding. I know it's got to be tough. Total tragedy. I think from our city council. Our heart goes out to Amanda and her family. Our heart goes out to Rick and everybody associated with Rick. I think that, I always tell people, no matter what the situation is, if something really bad happened in my family, no matter what it was, at the end of the day, he's our family. So we're 100% behind you. So with that, to other news, Tom Rothwell, longtime citizen in our community, passed away. I've got a little bit of a eulogy that I'm going to give to the city clerk to put into the meeting minutes and enter him in for Tom's dedication to the city. I would just say that, Tom, as anybody knew him, he was always the guy here wearing the Hawaiian shirt. When you're running for city council, he's the guy that brings you, like, you knock on the door, he opens the door and pulls you into the living room and interrogates you for hours on what you're going to do being a good city council member, and then makes you come and see him about every couple months to see how you're doing, really holds you accountable. And then, you have him on a commission, and he did a lot of tremendous things for our city. I want to say thanks to his family, his daughter, who's been really good and close with all of us, keeping us informed. And he now joins his wife, Vivian, in heaven. And again, tonight, Mayor, I'd like us to close the meeting and Rick's, and within Tom also, so if you wouldn't mind. I'd also say I attended the Cypress run last weekend. I just wanted to thank our city staff because that's one of 3 races in this area. So our Parks and Recreation and specifically Corey, who I don't see here tonight, we kind of share with Steel Beach, Cypress, and Los Al the race on the base. And I think Cypress, their staff did a great job, but our city's always there to support and always support us. So I just wanted to say thanks to our staff and to Cypress. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I attended the Army Birthday Ball, which was the 242nd birthday of the Army Birthday Ball, and that was great. A lot of our local guys from the JFTB were there. Thanks again for the 4th of July. That's a tremendous amount of work. We had a lot of obstacles to overcome, and From the spectator standpoint, it went off without a hitch. The backstories I know not so much, but the people that were there, the 12,000 people or so that were there, just enjoyed it, and families were there all day long, just enjoying being on a military base and enjoying the fireworks. I did attend the last two movies in the park, one over at Little Cottonwood, which is a great addition. All the people that walked over there, it was packed. Elm Street Band played. And then also the most recent one in Orville Lewis Park, which is also real well attended. It's a great neighborhood park and a lot of people there. So thanks again to Park and Rec and the Commission for always making sure that these happen. I attended the chamber breakfast. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lasser spoke, and he did an interesting presentation on the filming history over at JFTB. There are a lot of movies that have been filmed over there from way back when, because they were so close to Hollywood in perspective. And so he created a great recap of what the history was over there. Some upcoming events. We have a busy week this week. Tomorrow night is National Night Out. It starts at 5 o'clock over in the Target Center. This is a joint effort by Cypress, Seal Beach, and La Salle. Last time I checked, there's going to be over 100 booths there, so this thing has absolutely grown. It's going to be a lot of fun. Bring your family, bring your kids, and enjoy the night out with all the first responders and all the other people that are there. Wednesday, the OC Fair, it's Los Alamitos Day. We'll be raising the flag at noon, and 30 members of our La Salle Show Choir will be singing the Star Spangled Banner. So if you want to come join us, that'd be great. The fair's open until, I believe, the middle of August. And they've got some great deals going on. If you take one of the shuttles, it's $4 round trip and $3 entrance into the fair. So that saves you on parking and also the headache of traffic. On Thursday, over at Los Alamitos Youth Baseball is the Bronco World Series. It's the opening ceremonies. There's 8 teams coming from around the world, from Japan, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Chicago, Cleveland, Palmview, Texas, Torrance, and Los Al. So the opening ceremonies are at 3 o'clock, and Los Al plays Chicago at 8 o'clock. So if you want to come out and watch some great 12-year-old baseball, that's the place to be. And then I just wanted to kind of echo what my other colleagues have said about the tragedy we experienced a couple weeks ago. It took all of our breaths away. But as usual, our staff, our residents, and our businesses rallied around and supported like they always have in the past. And I'd just like to thank, our staff and officers. Despite the shock and the grief, the city didn't close. The streets were still patrolled. And despite your emotions and grief, we ran our business. So I want to thank you so much for that. The business and residents for dropping off the food, the notes of support, the texts, the emails, just everything. We all felt it, and it really did speak volumes and help everybody here get through some very trying times. And then also to our neighboring cities of Cypress and Seal Beach, they filled in the gaps as far as first responders. They helped with grief counseling, just all kinds of things that we would have never thought that we even needed until we really, really needed them, and they were here to support us. So thank you just doesn't seem like enough, but at this point, that's all I've really got. And just thank you to everybody for just really stepping up your game in just a really, really dark time. So with that, we will move over to items from the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Just to echo the comments that have been made up here, and thank you to City Council for your kind words and your support, and especially staff. Thanks you for canceling the meeting that would have happened the very next night on July 17th. All of staff greatly appreciated that, and we want to recognize you for doing that. Thank you very much for canceling that meeting. The chief and Captain Connolly, thanks for everything that you've done. And it's an organization that is in a healing mode right now, and it's just a difficult time for everyone. We thank the community also for outstanding support. It's just been amazing, the outpour of support from everyone involved. So thank you so much for that. I wanted also just give a brief update on the Los Alamitos beautification project while we're at it. And the project is approximately 30% complete. Mobilization, roadway excavation, base material excavation, and irrigation are 100% complete. New topsoil is 90% complete. New curb and gutter are at 85%. Traffic control is 40%, and electrical is 20% complete. There are going to be some traffic patterns that are going to change from this Friday, August 4th, through Monday, August 13th in the following areas, and we're trying to publicize this to get the word out because it's going to impact lanes along Los Alamitos Boulevard from 2 lanes to 1 for a period of time. So Beginning Friday, August 4th, the segment of Los Alamitos Boulevard between Catella and Cerritos will shift from 2 lanes of traffic to 1 lane of traffic in each direction. There will be no left turns permitted during this period. Beginning Friday, August 4th, Florista eastbound at Los Alamitos Boulevard will be closed for crosswalk installation and concrete curing. And also, August 4th, Florista westbound at Los Alamitos Boulevard will be closed for also crosswalk installation and concrete curing. Traffic delays and congestion are expected, especially during the morning and evening commutes. Digital message boards have already been placed in the areas, and your patience, understanding, cooperation are greatly appreciated. Drivers encouraged to use Bloomfield as an alternative to Los Alamitos Boulevard. There will be a few small change orders coming for removing 2 railroad tracks in the street median islands, extending some tunneling of electrical and irrigation line after meeting with the field crew from Edison and Golden State Water. So we just appreciate everyone's support and cooperation and patience during this project, a very important project for the city that's taking place this summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Warrants.
I'll move the warrants.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kusamoto.
Aye.
Councilmember Murphy.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar.
Aye.
Mayor Hasselman.
Aye. Consent calendar. All consent calendar items may be acted upon in one motion unless a council member requests separate action on a specific item. Okay,
Well,
anybody?
G.
G? Yeah, that's good.
And E.
And E? Do I have a motion for the balance?
I'll move the balance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's go with E first.
Start with the staff report.
Thank you, Councilmember Wilson. Have the Police Chief, Eric Nunez, do the staff report on this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. It's what you have before you is the staff report to the authorization to extend the agreement for the red light camera enforcement program. Typically for 2 years now, it's for 4 additional years. The summary is the police department seeks authorization to extend the contract for the red light camera photo enforcement program for an additional 4 years. In addition, we recommend the modification of the contract to include the malfunction rate and downtime causes to the existing contract for professional services for red flags and the traffic systems. The recommendation is to authorize the mayor to execute the second amendment to the agreement with Red Flex Traffic Systems Incorporated. Just to give you some background, we do have 2 locations in our city. One is at Los Alamitos Boulevard and Catella, and the other one is at Catella and Bloomfield. We have 3 approaches that we currently operate. The gentleman that spoke earlier was correct that there's only 2 cities in Orange County currently using photo enforcement through Red Flex, and that would be us and Garden Grove. Part of this this staff report, really what we're looking at in terms of the fiscal impact is there isn't any fiscal impact to the city except for that there is a 30% decrease in our approach, for our cost for approaches, and which is approximately a savings of about $49,500. And we also, with those, with the contract clauses that are put in place, we would have probably saved an additional $21,000 because of malfunctions and other issues. If we look at some of the, going back to some of this discussion, if we look back from June 1st, 2015 to May 31st, 2016, we experienced a traffic volume of about 11,444,407 vehicles traversing through our largest busy intersection. During the period of June 1st, 2016 to 17, we experienced a traffic volume of 13,032,191 vehicles, which is a 13% increase. The actual amount of citations that were written for those locations was only an increase of about 7.3% in comparison to the increase of traffic, and the accident rate was actually pretty flat on that. So whether they the question is do they actually, by this type of enforcement, do they prevent accidents from happening? I have here today two representatives from Redflex to discuss the actual process in which those tickets are issued, and how the red light camera system actually works. I think a lot of people are misled as to actually how it picks up people that are violating the red light. The truth is that nobody actually gets a citation unless they run a red light, and there is no other more dangerous type of activity than that we know of than running at speed and running through a red light and getting a broadside impact, or and usually you'll see that with the left turners turning left in front of people going through, and or people just going straight across on their green light and getting hit. There are a number of facts that we have that can look back at some of the late red light entries, and there are people that enter this intersection at a greater distance. The system doesn't even allow you to. It has to start looking at it 18 feet before that. Has to know that you're traveling at a certain speed through that intersection before it actually triggers the system to take a photograph of you. I don't want to get into all the technical aspects of it. I'll let the folks here from Redflex introduce themselves, and we'll give you a presentation on that as far as some background and some of the statistical analysis. We know that we were asked at one point to look at other intersections that were similar. We looked at an intersection that isn't red light enforced, and that would be on Los Alamitos, and I believe it was Cerritos, if I'm correct. And then on that, they had a increase. They have more accidents at that intersection than we do over at Los Alamitos and Catella, which actually has more traffic, has much more traffic flow than Cerritos, and the accidents there are a couple more accidents more than the one accident that we had last year. So that's, or I believe it was 4 and 1. So there are other areas like Bloomfield and Bloomfield, Catella, and then we looked at I think it was Bloomfield. It was Cerritos as well, or I'm sorry. And it was right down the street, and that intersection has less traffic than Blue, and it doesn't have the pedestrian problem that they do with the kids crossing that street. We actually have 2 crossing guards crossing streets at Bloomfield and Catella, so that creates another issue for us, and that's another reason why we have that system in place. But if you would like, I would be glad to bring up the.
It's okay. I have more questions about or comments about the contract, but I can make a statement about the 2 lists. I don't have any technical questions.
That's the
process.
That's the staff report.
Okay. I guess I'll start it off on there too. I did meet with Redflex representatives earlier this afternoon. I just have some comments about the contract, and I'll share that. Briefly, though, it is something I spoke about against during the campaign myself, and specifically the debate that we had, just echoing the comments that residents have had being against the red light cameras. Specifically, it disproportionately affects our visitors to our city. Over 90% of the infractions our red light tickets are ran to out of city residents. And also does create a high level of risk when we do have malfunctions, most recently when we had the yellow light timing issue. Personally, I feel that there's a due process issue when it comes to having a machine, even though there's a human component issuing the citations, that the motorist is not stopped. And I think considering that LA County does not report it to the DMV, it does create inconsistency with the traffic laws as somebody's going from Orange County to Los Angeles County, which is just the city next door, or county next door. When we look at legislation further down the road, specifically AB 3042, which is a pilot program that they're pushing the legislature, which would actually make photo enforcement of speed limits within San Francisco and San Jose Currently now, we do capture speed limits on the red light cameras. So if we are making a broader argument that we want to have this for safety, one can make the argument saying, well, would we want to do this for speed limits as well? So we have to be careful when we talk about automating traffic enforcement and not getting on the slippery slope towards something that could be, not what our city wants to have. That being said, specifically for the contract, we've had this contract for over 12 years. I'm thankful that Redflex was able to negotiate down the pricing contract. I do want to give credit to Captain Moore, who was principal on this board, to negotiating those concessions. But there are other cities that have looked at a pricing structure that specifically take into consideration how long the contract has been in place. So for us, for over 12 years of being in the contract, and then now we're going from 2 years to 4 years for a renewal process, we really should be looking at a cost structure that seeks to lower the cost over time, as one other city has done. So those funds could be used for the police budget and go back to public safety. Those are the comments I have. Thank you.
Certainly, I would like to just kind of point out to members of the community, and I'm in favor of this type of enforcement, because I'm old enough to live. I've come from a time when driving courteously was really kind of what we all did, and I don't really see a whole lot of that anymore. And then driving as a privilege, not a right, is also something that I grew up with. So whenever I approach intersections, I always wait an extra couple of 3 seconds before proceeding on, because time and time again I see very rude, very, reckless people running through lights. And I got hit by a car in an intersection that ran a red light. I almost died back when I was 18. So I am in favor of this type of enforcement, because when people are out there saying, well, you're creating a situation where because I want to break the law, I might now cause an accident by rear-ending somebody. My message to you is don't break the law. So, let's just kind of understand what we're trying to do here. It is safety. It is enforcing behavior that we used to have as a society that we just don't really have anymore. And so with that, I will go ahead and move to approve this the way it is. That'd be my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Discussion, Troy? You want to weigh in?
You know what? I would also have to agree with Councilmember Kuzumoto. I think that, the budget for our police force, for a city of our size, is almost 55% of our total budget. And again, just being one person up here, my preference is to have the police officers out doing stuff that is being more reactive to emergencies. It is a way of regulating traffic. It's a safety issue, and none of us are above it. My wife got a ticket going through there, and she came to me and she said, "I can't believe these red lights are really expensive." But I sat on the dinner table, I looked at it and said, "You ran the red light. You got to pay." So to me, it's pretty cut and dry. I think if you drive to the point where you're always almost making it, then something has to slow you down at some point. So I think there's a very cost-effective way for a city our size to be able to do this. And I have no issue with the fact that there's a lot of other cities that have given up on this. And within LA County, I think for Los Alamitos it works. And I do respect where Councilmember Wilson was coming from. I do know when you were running for your election, this was a big thing that you wanted to address, and you did specifically on the contract and the structure of that. So I respect that too. But I think, for me, I would also support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I also look at the red light cameras as an additional tool for our police department, the same way that I would look as the radar guns to catch people for speeding. Yes, it is a machine, but it helps our force enforce our laws that we have. We don't have them throughout the city. We have them at the two busiest intersections that are most used by students and pedestrians, and we sit up here and we preach traffic safety and student safety and everything else, and this is a powerful tool. I got one years ago on Valley View in Chapman at 5:30 in the morning and didn't get it for running a green light. It ran it for running a red light. So if I was upset, it was just upset for myself for just not paying attention and stopping when I was supposed to. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes. And then we'll go over to item G. Warren.
So Colleagues, so Josh and I were on this ad hoc, and we met with staff, and I really want to defer over to Josh, if I may, because it was really kind of, to me, it was kind of revealing in the ad hoc that we had, and I think this part coming to this body for an appropriation was something to kind of speed the thing along and not have to explain the whole process and then wait 2 meetings to come back for an appropriation. So that's kind of why we brought it before you today. And Josh, if you would.
Yeah, I debated this with Brett too about calling a staff report, and I don't want to. We obviously have a full menu today, so I don't want to go into the full amount of items. But I'd like to call attention to one of the items within the staff report, and that's kind of more of a summary of the Civic Center site analysis. So that would be attachment 2 within your reports if you guys want to jump ahead to that. Essentially, it takes a look at the different findings within the city and the city Civic Center. Specifically, what's the cost of us building on the existing site? Would it be to lease? And then also purchasing a space. And without going into the details of it, we can see the numbers for themselves. Building the existing site is going to be about $12 million. Scenario of lease 2 is about 5, and then purchasing is about 3.5. But there's another option here that's not really addressed, and this is something that we wanted to bring back as kind of the tool to help us make the final decision and to present to the council fully what the recommendation is. And that is, if we stay within our current facility and not tear down the building, but what would be cost to go through the ADA compliance, which we've been putting off and we know we're not in compliance for, and the additional necessary upgrades that we have. So if we look at our city hall as an asset and then the maintenance that we need to have, what is all the cost of deferred maintenance, so that we really can have an apples to apples comparison of what would it cost here to really do maintenance on our current building versus selling off a portion of it or maintaining a structure and selling it out. As part of that too, within the study, JLL did come back and find out that the highest and best use for it was looking at possibly for a hotel. And part of the agreement would be to look at and study a hotel and whether the feasibility within the current site structure as well. So that's kind of the higher level 30,000-foot overview of that summary. I definitely encourage you to read it if you haven't done so. But there's a lot of interesting facts with these tools. And I want to speak for Councilmember Kusamoto and I, but feel that we at least have enough to make a recommendation. And my deliverable timetable, and which I've asked staff to do, and they seemed to be begrudgingly on board with this, is to try to get a recommendation to you guys by the end of the year. Yeah. And that's my ultimate goal, is to be here before 2018 and say this is where we like to see our future of our Civic Center. So, Councilmember Kusamoto, thank you for your time.
So basically, though, he summarized it. So we're asking the council for an additional appropriation so we can retain JLL to, again, not drag this out any longer than we have to, and then hopefully we'll come back with information that we can make a decision. So we're going to need this additional study, and then ask for that. So questions?
Richard? Any questions?
Where's the money coming from?
This is would come from general fund reserves. Basically, it's a request for $49,900 from the general fund. And it's for the two pieces as mentioned by Councilmember Kusamoto and Wilson, and market analysis for highest and best use for a hotel on this site, and analysis of we call it the do nothing in terms of staying where we are and what will that cost be and how will that compare to the other alternative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. First of all, great job on the ad hoc, guys. Really appreciate it. For the community, we're really, we've kind of divided and conquered on this. We've got some of the council members in an ad hoc that's trying to figure out, what do we need to do on the site, and another that we're trying to look at funding and how we pay for it. A lot of the stuff that goes on is kind of contingent on what happens next door and whether this is kind of entailed into that. To me, I thought it's interesting is that I had the first reaction was what Councilmember Murphy had, which is we just passed our budget, for June 30th for this year, and this wasn't in there. The scope of the ad hoc was, for me, on page 4 of this deliverable. If anybody can see it, it's the executive summary, key findings of the Civic Center site overview. This is the best thing that I've seen, of any of our ad hocs that you guys were able to come up with, because it actually kind of gives us an idea of what are we really talking about we don't really have a lot of space to do anything else with City Hall, and it starts looking within, like, what if we did that here? So again, not to be too repetitive, but a lot of people that listen to these council meetings that don't see this, it's just really helpful. It goes to the next step, which is, hey, why don't you go one step further, and you can see how much this building would cost, but why don't we do the hotel? I struggle a little bit with that. I struggle a little bit with, do we really have the money to pay for that? We also have a little bit of a dilemma going on next door with the property. We've tried a couple different things. We've tried looking at the base, and that doesn't look feasible. We think about the potential impacts this has. We have the youth center behind us. There's just a lot of things that kind of go into this. And I guess my concern with the money is if we spend it, it could be 5, 10, 15 years from now till we can do something, because the hotel thing, and this was my question, the hotel evaluation, what does it assume happens for City Hall when this moves, and where do we move to? I think the hotel, we all know the hotels make a good amount of revenue for the city. It helps us with our infrastructure, but kind of 3 moves into this, I just wasn't sure what, even if it gives us the best picture, we still physically don't have a place, and I couldn't find. And so if either one of you guys could help with that.
I'll defer to Josh. Because I was, in the ad hoc, it kind of was very, enlightening in terms of the options, and I think it's the exciting part, and I want to defer to Josh. I think you really kind of gleamed onto what was.
Yeah, so bottom line is we don't have enough space to do anything meaningful. And the only meaningful option on there too would have been a hotel. So in order for us to look at the option of having a hotel, the recommendation, that staff echoed makes sense, was to look at a hotel feasibility study. Because if we can't theoretically have a buyer that would support operations to offset the cost, then what are we really talking about here? And we need to know what we're looking at to stay here. And structure our city in a way, whether we split up the services, whether we look to partnering with other municipalities to house different departments, but that was the crux of the hotel study. To your point, I agree. I mean, just in my own professional background, a market research study is only really good as the time that it was launched, because it does take so much time to bring it study, and then if it's sitting on the shelf, what does that look like, and the cost, and make sure it's negotiable. But we've talked about this for so long. I want to drive a decision that can be made by the end of this year or next year, so that we know that these studies are viable. This is the plan that we want to take. And regardless if we want to start work, shovel ready by demolishing in 2018, which most likely won't happen, at least we know that, okay, this is the feasible plan that we're going forward. We know that we don't have enough space to go through with a commercial development. If the property next door goes through or not, what does that look like? But if we don't have a feasible option to move forward, we know that we're here. We can end this debate. We can stop wasting staff resources and time, and focus on other meaningful projects instead of dragging this out. And the idea is to bring closure. Councilman Cruzman and I felt that we can bring closure with these 2 additional studies.
Do you both feel that if we don't go forward with the hotel piece, when I look at page 4 and I see how much it would cost to build a new city hall, we're dealing right now with the school district is looking at, a bond to, really a second bond since 2010, the $100 billion they did, now the next bond. But I'm kind of curious between your perspective or staff's. When I got done reading this, I was thinking of, I wonder if this is something where the community would actually consider a bond to build this up. And I'm not sure how a hotel would fit into that, because we were trying to conduct business, and so I don't know the cohabitation of. I started going a different direction, and my conclusion was, should we be evaluating a bond evaluation to do a building after this versus, looking past that to revenue generation by the hotel? And I've thought the hotel was more maybe next door, which has a bunch of zoning challenges itself. So. I'll put the pieces together.
Okay, yeah, and so if you look at, it's actually page 4 and page 5 of the executive summary, but page 5 basically has the 3 scenarios laid out, scenario 1, 2, and 3. And scenario 3, which is where the ad hoc committee is right now in terms of a recommendation, comparing that to the alternative 4, which is analyzing staying on site. Right now, just at the highest level, as Councilmember Wilson mentions, the scenario 3, a purchase, would be $3.5 million roughly. So that's purchase existing buildings for most city functions, with the exception of the police department and Parks and Recreation Department. So police department and recreation department would be built on the 1 acre site, roughly, where the community center is, and the hotel, if the feasibility study pans out, would be built on the 2 acre site. So that's what makes that pencil out to the roughly $3.5 million at this point. And we would look for purchasing an existing building for all the other functions, for the admin, for the development services, city clerk's office. All of the other functions would be on another site. And the financing mechanism, if I can just have Jason talk, just to give an idea of what we've thought about how this could work from a financing perspective, what we thought about with we talked about with the ad hoc and with JLL as our economic development consultant. And Jason has worked on this, the what if scenario. So Jason, if you can go into the possibility there.
Sure. So from a bond financing perspective, we would likely do something similar to what we did 2 years ago when we refinanced the 2006 COPs, the Certificates of Participation, for the Laurel Park acquisition. And so what that is, it's a financing structure that allows us to borrow. In this case, we'd be borrowing against that future anticipated revenue stream, the transient occupancy tax of the hotel. And then we would use those proceeds to build a capital building, a facility for the Civic Center. And the net difference is approximately $3.5 million. That's actually coincidentally closely in line with the amount of our 2015 COPs. The annual debt service on that is about $215,000 annually. So it's kind of within the realm of reasonableness in terms of absorbing it into the general fund operating budget. It wouldn't be easy, but it's doable. And so at this time, we're not looking at doing something like the school district has done, which is placing a tax on someone's property tax bill. It's really just absorbing it into the general fund operating budget. And so that's what we've looked at from a financing perspective.
To make the bond work, does it require something like a hotel then? Is that what you're saying?
So yeah, if we didn't have, we looked at the different scenarios. We looked at retail, office, and a hotel, and hotel yielded the highest amount of tax revenue to the city. And in fact, I wanted to point out as well, it's independent of what happens next door. So regardless of what happens next door, we have enough space here, the 3.1 acres, that we could move basically most of our city functions back onto approximately 1 acre, go up into a 2-story building that would house police and other core functions. About 30% of the city would have to be relocated. So for example, Public Works, garage area would have to be relocated throughout the city. But the other 2 acres that would be freed up by moving back would create enough space for a hotel. And we believe that future tax revenue could be used to finance the Civic Center.
So the timeline that Councilmember Wilson laid out to, I won't say the groundbreaking, but definitely the more aggressive, try to get to a conclusion. If this wasn't to pass tonight, specifically the $50,000 that you guys want for this, because I'm struggling with the budget. We barely scraped through. So with that and the PERS and all the stuff, the retirement stuff we've got going, but let's just take this individually. Could we get to an aggressive timeline that still puts us in the path, where you could go through a bond process if that is truly what we're thinking about without doing this study?
Well, I think the study is important because it provides tangible data for a hotel market and feasibility. So theoretically, the numbers would pencil, but we need to break it down into, can we actually get a hotel here? And so that's what the hotel market and feasibility study would do. The other component is looking at, well, what if we just remain here? We know that there already are approximately $1.6 million in ADA capital repairs, and that's just the bare minimum. That's the state mandated things that we need to do to our facilities. Above and beyond that, we have roof repairs and other types of repairs, AC, HVAC, and so so if we stay here, we want to identify what those costs would be, and compare that to the cost of actually building a new civic center ground up.
And I think to get to Councilmember Wilson and Councilmember Kusamoto's, I think, objective of what we heard from the staff level at the ad hoc, you get a snapshot in time. So it is $50,000 investment, but it's not going to be, I don't think, something that would be wasted, because we're trying to dovetail it also into our 10-year financial forecast. So as we're looking at these retirement costs, which are going to significantly impact us over the next 10 years, and that curve, we're trying to factor in the what if of the debt. So the $200,000 to $300,000 what if, put that into the whole picture, look at a 10-year plan, everything included for the city. So if the market feasibility analysis comes back and says, no, a hotel will not work, well, we also, this 50,000 will allow us to study the cost for staying here. So then we would have a plan, and that, I think that would meet Councilmember Wilson's and Kusamoto's objectives of December, January timeframe of having a blueprint for the future, whether it's staying here, whether it's a hotel, or whether the possibility of moving onto the 1 acre site, we could get flexible and we could get creative with that too, whether it's recreation and police that are there, whether recreation moves onto a site that we own. We'll look at that as part of it too, but I don't think it's something that will be wasted. I think it's something it's an investment in the future, like the Los Alamitos beautification project.
And Warren, I got to do this. This is my last question. So, you guys are bringing it to us. This is the process. We can't talk more than 2 at a time. So you guys had this. Do you both support the staff recommendation? I mean, just you're absolutely and feeling.
I think again, like Jason said, to get the data so we can come back with I'll say, a recommendation based on facts and data. Right now we have a lot of nice things and it's very promising, but I don't know that any of us would step behind it and say that's something we can take to the bank and that we would hang our hat on at this time. So I think we need that extra piece just to get there. So
thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like Troy, I respect my colleagues' work, and if you're both for it, it's hard to go against it. My question is, what did we pay for the first time with JLL?
We at this point we are now out of pocket, but the majority of the costs with JLL was covered by the exclusive negotiation agreement that we had with Lincoln. Stephen, do you know what the rough total was that we've paid so far?
That was a $50,000 contract.
what did we get?
Yeah. What? Okay. So they recommended a hotel, but as part of their study, they didn't then show us why, or I guess I was saying, what are we paying for a second study for? Why didn't they do it the first time around?
The first study is what you have here. This is the executive summary, and then there's a full report in addition to the executive summary. So this is intended to summarize everything that they've done. So they've looked at all the different alternatives, building on the existing site, leasing, purchasing, moving onto another site. They've looked, that's what that initial study was. And as we talk to the consultants, we need to fine tune this. They've come to the highest and best use, or their recommendation of a hotel. Now we need to actually go out and determine if the market supports that and if we can bring a hotel here. That's the next step.
And I don't know the answer to this, but should they have done that as part of the first study? When they're going to recommend a hotel, shouldn't there be some backup that says we recommend a hotel and here's who we think is interested?
They didn't know what they were going to recommend when they got into it. It wasn't a hotel, it was anything. I mean, it was wide open in terms of what the feasibility of what could take place on site or off site.
I don't need to beat this to death now, but I would like you to think about my question. What did we pay for the first time before we renegotiate the contract? But I'm going to vote for it, but please think of that and let's talk later about it.
But if I may, I think when I look at my notes, there was, as Brett said, no kind of one particular thing. That's what we get the scenarios. And the fourth scenario, which again is remain in place and invest in this facility, which we had talked about in the ad hoc quite extensively. So what you had was, I think, really of these different alternatives and the cost for each of those alternatives. And that's what we really got out of that first part of the study. We've now fine-tuned it, saying, okay, the scenario 3, if that's, what does it take to really add some facts and data that we can come back to the council with the plan by the end of the year, early next year, on a scenario 3, the $3.4 million, and what can we get? And, part of what it was is looking at the office space that we need, right? The footprint we need, what we don't need, and there was some stuff that like the public works yard. Do we need as big a yard and all that? Which until they did the study, they didn't know. Okay. And I think that was kind of a staff input driven. So when that's how we didn't have enough information to task JLL, I think, to really come back with a refined answer. So that's what you're going to get in this next go round.
Can I add a piece on there? And I guess we're not getting hung up on the study of what we need to do for here, because everybody wants to know what we need to do to maintain stability, but more of the cost of the hotel. So I'll put it to my colleagues. If we didn't do the study for the hotel specifically, and we came back with a recommendation to say we are going to do, as Jason suggested, but we're going to sell this and we think we can get a hotel out of this, we had no data to support that, would the council feel okay with making that decision without the data? And if you are okay with that decision based on just hey, hotel's the best use and we're going to go out and try, then we don't need to do the study. But if you would like additional data to support that decision, then this is the best scenario that we can have. Just basically say, do it, here's the data, let's make a decision. So that's how I would phrase it in a simplistic way.
Reading this, I was looking at the hotel market feasibility study. When I first read this, I thought we were putting the cart before the horse, because they're going to come back and they're going to say the hotel works here. It's freeway accessible, and we're going to go, great, now what? Where do we go? So if we decide to do this, there's a couple things that I would like to do in tandem. One, we need to actively go out and identify pieces of land that would even make sense for us, because I think we know what the answer is going to be. I mean, they've said hotels are profitable. Garden Grove is kicking themselves because they didn't double the size of their Great Wolf Lodge when they originally built it. So we know that hotels are good for cities, given the right circumstance. The other thing that I would like to do in tandem, if we're looking at adding a fourth hotel to the city, with the new one coming in, and I know that the other two are smaller, but I would like to look at our TOT, which right now is one of the lowest in Orange County. And that does have to be a ballot measure. But I think as we start a hotel district, 4 in our city is quite a bit. And looking at that TOT and making a decision on whether that makes sense to go out for a ballot initiative to raise that a bit would also make sense. I just want to make sure that we're not going to put this ahead of other things that we've committed to doing, such as the zoning study. The other things we're talking tonight, I just want to make sure that we're doing those in the right order, because those are going to affect the city as a whole much more than a civic center relocation is.
Yeah, and it's basically, Jason, in terms of the funding source, I said general fund reserves, but as like the additional dollars that we used for the Los Alamitos beautification project, about $200,000, that came out of the PERS reserve. This likely would come out of that reserve as well, right?
Exactly. We're projecting right now the fiscal year 16-17, which we're still in the process of closing the books on. We're projecting a surplus of at least $194,000 approximately, and so a portion of that would be used to fund this agreement.
And I'm always nervous about touching anything PERS because it's so out of our control. I agree with that the feasibility study, if it helps us with financing or being creative with our financing, if that data helps us get good terms negotiating some financing, I'm all for it. But we also need to be prepared for the answer and not have a very good study that we're spending $25,000 on sit on the shelf because we don't know what we're going to do, because the answer is build a hotel here and we're not sure. We've had a lot of no's. We need to find out some yeses of what if they come back and say this is the absolute best use for this land. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for approving the staff report.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Perfect. Okay. Now we're going on to item 11A, the adoption of the master fee schedule. And we will open it up to public comments first.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Adam Wood with the BIA. Our mission is to champion housing. As such, we saw the agenda tonight. We had some concerns with the way it's been structured. Proposes a fee structure that seems to target development in two ways. First, building, planning, and public works are the only departments facing steep increases. Second, the two surcharges, one for computers, one for the general plan, seems to be paid by developers. We're a little worried that this can send an unintended message to home builders that are looking to invest. We suggest a re-examination on the surcharges and possibly a phased implementation on the fee structure. And happy to answer any questions on that, but just wanted to register our comments.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Doug,
Anybody else?
is that mic working?
Okay, I'll close the public comments and we'll go with for a staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I have Jason Alimam, the Administrative Services Director, do the staff report on this.
Good evening again. The city charges a range of fees for services provided to residents and businesses, and those fees and charges had not been reviewed since 2008, nearly a decade ago. In 2015, MBS, a consultant, was hired by the City Council to conduct a user fees and charges study, and the scope of the study was limited in that it did not encompass or include taxes, fines, or development impact fees. In March of this year, the study was completed, which was the culmination of 18 months of work on behalf of city staff and all departments. And there were 2 study sessions that were held with the Budget Standing Committee earlier this year, and then last month there was a separate study session that was held with the City Council. And so the master fee schedule that's in front of you today incorporates the results of the study, and it also includes the recommendations from staff, the Budget Standing Committee, and the City Council. Just from the 30,000-foot level, citywide, there are approximately 400 user fees and charges. 16 fees are recommended with a fee reduction, and so there are so consistent with predominant practice, certain fees that provide a community-wide benefit are recommended to be set at less than the full cost of service. So, for example, fees associated with recreation and community services have been recommended to largely remain flat and at less than full cost of the service. On the other hand, other services that directly benefit private development, we believe should not be subsidized by city taxpayers, and therefore staff recommends full cost recovery for planning, public works, and building services. At this time, staff recommends that the City Council consider adoption of the master fee schedule. And Adam Wood is here from the BIA. They've also submitted a letter which has been sent to the City Council, and it's also on the dais for your review as well. With that, turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you. Back up here, comments? Anybody? Okay, do I have my only comment on this is if this passes, I'd like to make sure that this is a living, breathing document. So as we have labor increases, new employee contracts coming up, that it gets implemented into this as well, so it doesn't become stagnant in 10 years we're redoing this as well.
Yeah, the way it's written, it will have to come back every year, but there is a CPI that is built into it. So the fees that are getting the increase in the fees that are getting adopted will be updated by cost of living increases annually that will be brought back to the council for consideration.
Great, thank you. So do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second? Do we need to roll? We don't need to roll call this. No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. 4-1. Okay. Next we have the Building and Residential Improvement Program. Discussion item, and we'll go ahead and do a staff report on this.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. The Development Services Director, Stephen Mendoza, will do the staff report on this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. The Business Residential Improvement Program, we're calling it 2.0. The Budget Standing Committee recommended resurrecting this program for the new fiscal year. The program reimbursed building permit fees equal to the dollars spent locally on construction-related materials. We first had this program in both 2012 and then extended it into 2013. During that period, $41,341 was funded to 44 individuals. 371 building permits were issued during that first version as well. And feedback was very positive from the store owners who were aware of the program. If you remember, we did a marketing blitz allowing the store owners that had home-related products and housewares to put a big flyer in their window. The program generated $85,000 in local spending. We did that. The reason we know that is because we accepted the receipts when people asked for the reimbursing. I don't want to give you individual numbers from individual businesses because I'd get in trouble if I did that. There are several pertinent points built into the program as proposed this time. A start date of August 1, ending at the end of the fiscal year. A funding level of $75,000 in reimbursement and marketing. $2,500 limit per property to make the money go further for more of the parties interested in the program. The program will be operated on a first-come, first-served basis, and reimbursements must be requested and supporting documentation provided to us by June 30th. Improvements are to be inspected in compliance with city codes, and it reimburses fees only for city fees. We don't allow for reimbursement of other agency fees, like the Orange County Sanitation District or the school district building-related fees or utility fee. We would only be able to reimburse fees from our permits that we issued. Fees for pre-construction work such as engineering, soils testing, architectural services, and surveying are not eligible, and city staff and elected officials are not eligible as well. And with that, we're proposing the resurrection of this program. And with that, I would turn it over to the City Council if you have any questions regarding the proposed Business and Residential Improvement Program 2.0. I'd also like to remind the City Council that the Orange County Business Council actually gave the City Council an award for the first version of this program a few years ago. It was the red tape program, removing red tape from development program, and the City Council was awarded one of their innovation awards that year.
Thank you.
So Stephen, no, I'm sorry, can you go over the numbers again? How many, what were the statistics of 1.0?
There were 44 individuals who actually claimed a rebate, and that amount added up to $41,341. During that same period of time, 371 building permits were issued. And again, really positive feedback on the program.
Okay. So I may continue. So I think when we did this the first time, and I remember distinctly talking with you and Jeff Stewart at the time, right? And the economy was in certainly a different kind of state. I think consumer confidence was probably at a very, very low level. Businesses, I think, were having challenges as well. And I think when we did this, it was sort of taking a chance to help kind of jumpstart some of the local home suppliers, business, so to give some people confidence. And I remember a story that Mayor Pro Tem Edgar talked about where he actually had a discussion with someone who was doing some construction, and it really kind of turned around the deal for them, where they actually went to Ganal to buy their lumber instead of some other place. So I think back then it was something that was really, really good for the community, and I'm really not sure right now if that's something that we need in the improved confidence that we see out here in the business. But let me ask you this: in terms of building permits, the 371 that you cited, those were in that 1 year period of the first version of this?
It was actually a little longer than a year, but yeah.
Yeah, because we extended it. So,
yeah.
So if you were to say pick in the last 12 months, how many building permits have been issued in the last 12 months? Would it be the same, higher, or lower? I mean, I'm not trying to pin you down on a number, but I'm just trying to get a sense of, again, this goes back to me in terms of consumer confidence.
I actually couldn't tell you off. If I looked at, I've got a couple of documents where I could find the answer, but I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Well, just gut feel. Do you think it's higher? Do you think it's lower?
Yeah, I think business has improved.
Yeah,
but
okay.
also
That would I would be surprised if it's lower, but okay. So I kind of wonder, and I guess I'll hear from the council and the standing committee as to do we think that this is necessary for both consumers and businesses that we need to do this? So I'm going to keep an open mind, but I might have some other questions. So back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'll have to follow a comment. So I appreciate staff for bringing this forward. This is something that, as part of the kind of the Budget Standing Committee, I said if we're looking at raising fees in the structure, and Mr. Alimon hit on it, nail on the head, we want to have a cost recovery for developers, private interests that are coming here making a profit on the city, but we also want to incorporate value for the residents that are here and also the business owners too. So if we are looking at increasing fees, while there are less of an impact there still was, this was something where we could say, hey, we're still trying to maintain value. We're trying to shop local, buy local, invest local, and also encouraging the permit fees. So it was an idea kind of born from that. That coincides with raising of the fee structure. So that was the impetus for bringing this forward. So thank you, staff, for doing this, and I'm in support of this program.
Troy?
I remember when we did do this before, and like Councilmember Kuzmoto had talked about, we were dealing with Gemini Forest Products, Ganal Lumber, a bunch of those companies. They were really struggling. We were struggling with point of sale tax and trying to figure out ways. And the worst thing that we could think of doing would be to give rebates back when we were barely scraping through too, but it served its purpose. I said it on the last item, and I think I'm going to say it again, is it's hard for me to stomach. We just finished our budget, and this item's coming back now to actually do another rebate or less than the amount of money. And then we go and we raise the fees kind of all in the same thing. So we seem like, definitely as Councilmember Wilson put it together in his mind, there's kind of a give and take. But when I first read it before hearing that, I just thought it kind of sent a mixed message to the community that we weren't really being consistent with, do we have a financial problem? Do we not? The economy right now is a lot different. I think that if you look at the point of sale stuff that's going on right now, we get an HDL report every quarter, I believe. The building industry is doing really well right now, but the problem really is that there's not any new properties up for sale. So people are really starting to invest to build or update their house. And so I think we're kind of, I'm in construction a little bit too. I think there's a lot of people that are putting money into their house regardless of the rebates or not. So I'm struggling supporting this. I'm going to keep an open mind, but I'm leaning towards not being supportive, but I definitely want to hear more. Thank you.
I feel the same way. I want to keep an open mind. I know I was in the back of the room when this was debated the first time around, and the economy was much different. Real estate was really struggling. The economy was struggling. When I read this over the weekend, my basic question was, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? I think we did a good job on the fees, separating out some cheaper fees for our residents. And I guess, unfortunately, for this program, I think that's enough. Okay, that I think we put this away for when the cycle needs it, and the day will come when people are going to, the real estate's going to start declining someday. It's just a cyclical business, and let's just put this away and keep it in the holster for when there's a good need for it. Thank you.
I would probably tend to agree with that. I do like the program a lot. I like what it does as far as just redirecting some money into our local businesses. Particularly ones that are on La Salle Boulevard with the construction and things we're doing. But after hearing the comments, it's not something that's desperately needed at this time. And I probably would agree that, let's just say that when we really do need to entice some more business here. So with that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
I'll second it for the sake of just further discussion, and maybe I'll even offer a substitute motion. So if I can ask the maker of the motion, do you sense a need for this from a, I guess, local business standpoint or a local business or homeowner standpoint? Is there something in the community that says we should do this now in terms of helping?
Well, in light of the comments about the broader economics that are at play, well, no.
Okay.
But it was coinciding with the fee.
Okay,
study.
and I appreciate and understand. Let me offer maybe a substitute, if I may. So, I would like to table this. My motion, my substitute motion is to table this. Let staff kind of do a little more research because I want to hear if there is really a compelling need. And like Stephen, do you have something from the businesses? How will this help them? Right? Is that something you can get in the next month or two to bring it back? And let's just see if there's additional information that, so we can come to I think, well, I don't know that it would change my mind, but I'd like to hear more from a compelling reason to continue on with 2.0. So that'd be, I'm sorry it's a long-winded motion, but really it's really to give staff a little more time to come back with some information and see if there's, let's make sure that if this is not going to go forward.
Can we just clarify what that, in terms of the scope of what staff would be analyzing? Is it could be a survey, a full-blown survey?
No, nothing like that. More anecdotal. How's it going to help local businesses?
Number of permits already or historical, as you mentioned?
Permits would be really interesting to see. If we double the permits and then people are buying their supplies from neighboring cities, would we want to try and capture that? That might be an interesting, but I don't know how you get facts on that. But certainly, I think if we're running 371 permits in that time period before, and if we're doing double that, then where are they buying the materials? We might not never know, but anecdotally, we might find out. And how would that again benefit a Ganal or a Gemini or any of the other local businesses?
Yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes with the council. But in terms of staff direction, we just would like to know what the council what you have in mind for us to analyze and bring back.
I think another interesting, just writing on your coattails as far as how many businesses do we have here that would even qualify for people to go back and get rebates? The Ganal, the McNally Lighting, are there 5 businesses, 20 businesses? How many would really take advantage of people shopping here locally because they offer?
Because the last program was businesses and residents, so it
but as far as the Ganal Lumbers, the McNally Lightings, those type of businesses that would people go shop local because they're going to get a rebate. How many businesses are that would even qualify as certified vendors or however you want to call it, that then residents or businesses could come back and get a rebate because they shopped at one of these businesses?
Yeah, Stephen, do you have a thought for how we can analyze it?
Well, we actually have a list of every receipt given to us by the 41 parties. We have what businesses they were. The majority was at the big guy. I mean, 90% of the money was at the big guy.
Okay.
Not naming a business.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, anyways, that long-winded substitute, but I would like to give staff a little more time. I guess time to come up with more compelling information. If that's something that I can get a second on to substitute.
Does he have to accept the substitute?
Sure.
Make
Yeah,
the motion?
I'm willing to accept that too. I think it's fine if we can bring us back at a different time, but I in light of the conversation with council, I think it probably would be an extended period of time out, which
Could
is
be.
perfectly fine.
Well, can I ask that, since the motion is there and there's a second, so can we discuss a little
Sure.
bit further? So, from the response that we got from staff, I'm not 100% confident that they have clarity what needs
Okay.
to have happen. And I'm just wondering what would be compelling for us sitting up here that would change between now and then. If you listen to Councilmember Murphy's comment about keeping it in the holster, I don't feel, Rich, that you were budging a whole lot and seeing this as a value. And I know I'm struggling just because I'm kind of closer to, buying a lot of stuff out, in the construction industry. So I don't know. I just don't want to waste time too. I'm just trying to be conscientious. So I don't know if I'd be able to support it at this time.
Might be a point of privilege to add. Would it be safe to assume that staff could monitor the point of sale levels for our major suppliers within there, and if they indicate that they are severely dipping and the industry is hurting as a whole, that they can bring us back to a different point to say we experienced 20% loss within the building industry over the last 6 months. It might be time to look at a program that could stimulate local building supplies.
Yeah, that might work in terms of the keeping it in a holster and bringing back analysis or data. It's really bringing back data at that point.
And quantifiable.
That would work.
Then let me change if I may, change the just table it and then allow it to come back at a future date, time to be determined, undetermined time. So it'll be the motion, substitute motion.
Second.
With it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, 13A ordinances.
Quick break.
Sure, I'm sorry. 10-minute recess?
Sure. 5 minutes.
5? 10. Go and reconvene, and we'll start with item 13A, the dissolution of the Cable Television Commission. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This item is being brought back to you based on previous direction from the City Council to analyze the function of the cable television, LoSal TV, and Jason Alamam, the Director of Administrative Services, will do the staff report.
So if you remember 2 years ago, in July of 2015, there was a cable operations study that was presented to the City Council. And one of the key findings from the study showed that the Cable Commission had operated in a level of disarray for a number of years. And then one of the other findings identified the fact that since there was no cable operations manager, there was really no one to oversee station operations. And so for the past 2 years, our LoSal has provided cable operations manager services, and city staff is very pleased with the expertise provided by the cable manager. The Cable Television Commission has not held a meeting since July of 2015, and which has provided approximately $1,500 in annual savings in overtime costs associated with the administration of those meetings. And so it's recommended that the Cable Television Commission be dissolved at this time. And in order to do so, an amendment to the Los Alamitos Municipal Code is required to dissolve the commission. And so tonight, the City Council will consider introduction of an ordinance, which, if approved, would be adopted by the City Council on August 21st. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open it up for public comment. And seeing none, I'll go ahead and close it and bring it back to council for discussion. Any comments on that? Do I have a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Second.
Second, all in,
That motion being to waive the reading and introduce ordinance number 2017-01, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Los Alamitos, California, amending the municipal code, and I'm sorry, that is not the right one, but repealing Chapter 2.50 to Title II of the Los Alamitos Municipal Code, dissolving the Cable Television Commission, and repealing ordinance number 07-02.
do I have a second?
Yeah, Murphy.
Me.
I'm sorry. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And item 13B, consideration of an urgency interim ordinance establishing a temporary moratorium on the enforcement of zoning restrictions against existing recreational uses in the planned light industrial zone. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. The Assistant City Attorney, Lisa Kranitz, will be doing the staff report on this one.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. In March 2015, when the City Council adopted the new general plan, and then in June 2016 with the matching zoning ordinance, the planned light industrial zone essentially prohibited recreational uses, and there was a new area created of a limited industrial zoning district. Based on that change, the recreational uses are no longer allowed. The question has come up now. Council members Kusamoto and Wilson have requested the council re-examine whether there really should be a prohibition of recreational uses in the planned industrial general plan area and the planned light industrial zone, or whether we should eliminate that prohibition. In the meantime, while this is being studied, because there is at least one recreational business that would be impacted, staff's recommending that there be a moratorium on any enforcement against businesses in the planned light areas, so that they could continue operating during whatever period of time the council, the city staff, planning commission, council was resolving this issue. This is an urgency ordinance. It would require a 4/5 vote of the city council to pass.
At this time, I'll open it up for public comments.
Good evening, council members. My name is David Railbrook. I own Crossroad Los Alamitos. I submitted to you guys a letter with attachments to all of you on July 10th. I came in tonight to highlight some of those issues addressed in the letter as it relates specifically to my business, but really in general to any business. I don't want this to be about my business. I want this to be about any recreational use, because I don't think it's just about me. I think it's about the city as a whole and businesses as a whole in the city. When it comes to zoning and the ordinances in the general plan with Los Alamitos, the Los Alamitos Municipal Code, as it stands today, is overly restrictive on businesses such as mine. There are no areas within the city limits that allow for actual permitted use. Right? If I want to go into the plan or the new LI zone, I have to still get a permit. So it's not an easy fix for me or any other business similar to mine. Only zoning districts CG and LI allow for health facilities to operate, and that's only if conditional use permits are obtained. Their overly restrictive zoning areas discourage businesses from coming to Los Alamitos to operate. One of the goals of this general plan is to have, and I quote, commercial, office, and industrial opportunities that maintain capability or compatibility with surrounding neighborhoods, businesses, and public facilities. As I'm sure you all know, space in Los Alamitos is limited, and if businesses similar to CrossFit, Los Al, or any other recreational use are required to operate in the LI zone, the city of Los Alamitos will force multiple businesses to relocate to neighboring cities, which is not in conformity with the goals of the general plan and the growth of the economic development of our city. I am hopeful that the city will approve a zoning ordinance amendment to create the overlay zone in compliance with what was previous in 2015-2035 general plan to allow for more flexible uses, certain parcels in plan light industrial zone. We've been operating where we are for over 5 years. We've had no safety issues, no issues with high traffic or causing any accidents or issues with safety for my clients or with neighboring businesses. You guys have letters or emails of local businesses who are in our general area in that plan light industrial zone who support what recreational uses do in their area. And I just want to close with, I hope you guys do approve this, so thank you.
Thank you. Any other? I'll close the public discussion and bring it back to the council. Josh?
Actually, I'll let Councilmember Kusamoto start it off. He originally brought this to me, and I seconded for discussion, so I'll let him.
Yeah, thank you. So, I guess for Lisa, I guess, okay, so we're a charter city, right? In charter cities, we can be inconsistent with our general plan.
Do you say you can be inconsistent with the general plan? I'd have to look at what your specific charter says. Most.
Okay,
Steve,
and then let me kind of go down the path a little bit further. So, in the prohibition of recreational use in the PM zone, can you point to me where that is in the general plan that says where you're prohibited from that? I know it says about the light industrial. I get that part, but where in the PM zone does it say we cannot have that use?
The general plan wouldn't say that use is not allowed. That'd be a zoning, that'd be a corresponding implementation through the zoning ordinance. The general plan would set the policy saying that you wanted these to be clustered in one zone, one area. And then the zoning code, when we actually adopted the zoning ordinance, for the limited light industrial area, then created that zoning that allowed those businesses with a CUP to be in that specific zone, and then disallowed it in the remainder of the industrial area. So the general plan set the policy, and then the zoning code set the law.
So it's implemented in the zoning code. Can you point to where that is? Is that in
Section of the zoning code, yeah, it's in the use table.
The
Yeah.
table, and then when it says industrial, or it says recreational use, in the PM zone, there is no notation there, correct? It's a blank square?
Well, let me pull it up.
That's what I'm trying to do, but I got recipes instead.
Okay.
Was it Division 4?
Carrie, do you have, oh no, is that updated?
Steve, which division is that?
I'm getting to it, sir. It's in Division 2, Commercial and Industrial Zoning Districts.
Got it.
Section 17.10 is the use table where it describes what uses are permitted or unpermitted in the CO, CG, PM, and LI zone.
So when you go down to recreational use, or is it health, fitness, health/fitness facilities?
I'm going through it.
We drafted it, so I know it's in there.
Yeah.
And this isn't up to date.
I'm on it.
Yeah. Okay. Because I can find it, this just is outdated.
Health, fitness facilities are listed in the table and it has a CUP under the LI,
Okay.
which means that it's conditional near
the LI. So the fact has nothing in the PM means that it's prohibited?
Yeah, a blank line means it's not permitted. Or I should say a dash mark.
The hyphen, right?
Yeah.
So what? Well, I guess the purpose then of the moratorium to not enforce this part of code, then we would come back with a change to lift that hyphen out of there and put CUP in that box. Is that kind of the end state that we were trying to?
Well, it's too early to predict what the public might support or what the council might support as far as a general plan amendment and then a zoning change. It's too early to predict that. No one has applied for a zone change.
So you would say general plan amendment. What part of the general plan would have to be amended?
I thought it was in, and I apologize, but the general plan is not coming up online right now. I thought it was specifically in the general plan too, Steve, in the limited industrial area that said recreational uses were prohibited, both in the general plan and also in the zoning code.
I'll find it.
Okay.
So Lisa would say it's prohibited in the PM zone? In your recollection? I guess Stephen will find it, but that's...
Prohibited in the, is PM limited industrial, Steve?
LI is limited industrial.
Okay. I'm sorry, yes, it's prohibited in the planned light industrial zone, which I believe is the PM. And it's allowed in the LI. Oh, okay. Steve?
All uses permitted in the planned industrial as well as commercial recreation uses within the industrial buildings such as soccer, gymnastics, archery, indoor health and fitness, and batting cages.
That's the limited industrial, but
Is a description of the limited industrial zone.
but the planned industrial specifically says commercial recreation uses are not permitted in the planned industrial.
And that's hence why we would need a moratorium to be in compliance with that as part of the general plan and the accompanying zoning?
Well, the moratorium would allow time for staff, the plan, to look at this issue, take it back to the Planning Commission for them to reconsider whether a change should be made. And if a change has to be made, then it has to be made to both the general plan and the zoning ordinance to allow the recreational uses back into the planned industrial area. So the moratorium, while it's in effect, and it can be in effect for up to 2 years, it starts at 45 days, then it's brought back to you for extensions, first to make it for a full year, and then for another year after that, if you still need that time. Staff could process during that 2-year time, up to that 2-year time period.
So I appreciate the staff coming forward with this innovative solution. I wasn't even really considering moratorium, just from my colleagues' kind of perspective. I was really kind of going down the path. Why are we enforcing something on a business when an adjacent business is the swimming school, I think, in that neighborhood, and there's a CrossFit recoil in the other industrial zone. We had the batting cage on Humboldt and all kinds of recreational use all throughout the city. So it just seems to me that we've maybe overly constrained ourselves if we've gone down the path of not having the ability to consider those type of businesses in places that are probably appropriate for that kind of business. So if the moratorium would work, I'll kind of listen to what the colleagues have to say, but I think I'll be supportive of that until we can figure out really what we want to be doing. Thanks.
Josh?
Great. Personally, for me, there really has to be a really high threshold for moratorium. Drastic changes should not be, should not be lightly and should be made on sound logic. I feel the responsibility for every business owner to know the laws and applicable regulations for their own business. However, I can support the moratorium because our zoning should be allowed for these uses within this area. City zoning should not only reflect the safety and welfare of the citizens, but be a living document towards the current economic realities of the community, which are based on supply and demand. So if there is demand in this basic decision reach, because there is consumer demand for these services, businesses exist in this zone. Right next door is, for example, another recreational business. And taken in total, their presence has not disrupted perceived conflicts within this business zone. So I support a further review of zoning ordinances, and like I said, I would support this moratorium.
Richard?
I'll just pass it this time.
Okay. Troy?
I think we need to put this in perspective, and this, again, first of all, I appreciate that we're trying to bring this up and look at it. For me, looking at recreational use in an industrial zone is not something that we would call for a moratorium. It basically, we just finished the general plan. We just looked through this, and basically this has 4 steps till it ends up being 2 years. So we go over it and over it and over it. And at the crux of this, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we wouldn't have even been talking about this. Matter of fact, we were talking about how to try and save Arrowhead and how to try to get priorities that are a little bit more pressing than the recreational zone and the general plan. Furthermore, sir, I know you're here from CrossFit Los Al, and you've been effective on lobbying 2 council members to get behind wanting to try to help you because that you have a business that's out of compliance. You were given time to get your stuff squared away. You misread whatever the situation was with your deal. We gave you a year or 2 extension, and you realized, oh my God, it's actually another year or 2 after that. And in your dissertation to us saying, look, this is what happened, help me. And we said, hey, why are you doing this? We helped you once. And your response was, well, I think you have a bad policy. I not only do I want to be helped, but I want to change policy. So now we're working on changing policy based on your request. And that's everybody in our city, whether you're a business or a resident, has every right to do that and to get people to carry that up here, and we should have this debate. But this, to me, the bigger picture is, we started off by saying, hey, look, this isn't about one business. It's absolutely about one business, and it's completely out of priorities of what we need to be focusing on as a city. I'm sorry, sir. I'm a business owner too. I go through when I go and lease a new building or whatever I'm going to do. I try and make sure that I understand all the implications. Maybe what would be helpful for the community, because this is not about us trying to do something business-wise. We're not trying to be sensitive to zoning. So what I'd like, if staff could just remind us, to the extent that it can be talked about, because this wasn't agendized as a CrossFit LoSal issue, this was agendized as a moratorium. Unfortunately, and I'm going to ask the city attorney, I don't think we can talk about the real reason why we're here.
You can talk about anything that's related to the moratorium, which includes businesses like CrossFit.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you. So, Stephen or Brett, do we have any other businesses that we're worried about right now that we need to call a moratorium on other than this one business? Stephen?
No, sir.
Okay. And like I said, 4 months ago, was this on our horizon of something that we've got a zoning problem. We do have a zoning problem of priorities that are starting to affect businesses. As we got done with our general plan, we tried to put together a sequencing, but this issue 3 to 4 months ago wasn't even on our docket to be evaluated or in our planning commission. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, the planning commission made it very clear. They were provided a date at the end of his lease, and they were made it very clear that they want to be amenable to that date. The date wasn't pulled out of the sky. It was provided by the applicant.
Right.
The planning commission was very considerate of his needs, of his expansion. Again, his one storefront is grandfathered in. His secondary storefront was an illegal expansion. So we're only talking about the secondary storefront here.
So to remind me, Steve, so he's running a business, it's doing great. He goes, talks to the landlord, they have a suite open next door, and then they go through a process and open up the wall in between, didn't go through the process to get it permitted correctly. We found it through whatever process that was, brought it to his attention. We went through a gyration up here, the council level, because it went through the planning commission and got to us. We said, hey, you know what, we want to be sympathetic. How much time did we give the business at that point to fix whatever had to be fixed or to get themselves squared away?
That was in 2015. So he's had almost 2 years.
Okay, and then we made the comment earlier that, hey, if we act like this, we're going to drive businesses to another city. Sir, I read some of your letters, and apparently in other cities you're having a hard time finding a place. So it doesn't sound like we're really driving companies out of here, or there's not a lot of different places to go. But I guess for me, I really struggle. I think there are so many things that a city has to take on. And don't get me wrong, I applaud you. I think the fact that you got two of our smartest folks up here to be able to go and actually work on the policy is a good deal. I can't support this. I know what it's about. It's about your business. I'm really sorry about the fact that the timing off on this, but I can't see change in policy. And I'm the last person up here that wants to ever do a moratorium. I will never support something like that just for one business. So with me, that's where I'm at, and I don't really have anything else. So, thank you, Mayor.
I'll go ahead and go, and Richard, I'll let you go last. Just for a couple of clarifications from the staff report, on page 2 under discussion, the first paragraph, there's a sentence that says, as there is at least one recreational business that would be required to vacate its local location in the near future. Is that a true statement?
That it's a half truth, that he would only have to vacate the illegal expansion area.
Right. It's basically about, it's not vacating, it's putting up a wall.
The second storefront.
Okay. And then also in the third paragraph of that same discussion area, it says, based on zoning regulations may be inconsistent with possible amendments to the general plan. I'm reading that as there's two really big what ifs. The first being maybe inconsistent, and second, with possible amendments to the general plan. I know in our budget that we just passed for 2017-18, there's no money in there to revise a 2-year-old general plan that we set forth that gives us a 25-year picture. So if this would happen, it would happen probably the following year, if it would even come back to us, if we even entertain revising the general plan.
Yeah, that is not even on the horizon. It is, right now it's concentrated on the zoning code update, which hasn't been funded yet either.
Right.
So we'd be taking 2 steps back.
Right. Yeah, and I agree with some of the other comments up here. This is about one business right now. We've had no other comments from other businesses that are in the same dilemma. I feel that we gave, adequate notice, and here we are 2 years later visiting it again. So, Richard?
Well, as we've discussed here, I'm sitting here thinking of the United States and with what goes on right now with our Russia discussion, where we're just mixing items up. And I feel the same thing happened here. I would have preferred to see just a staff report on the business in question and let us address that issue separately than any rush to do zoning for one business. Is it possible to get a staff report next month about the issue with the CrossFit?
The problem was there's no mechanism to bring this item back before the city council.
Yeah, previously it was before the city council based on a call for review or appeal. And that was the mechanism within a timely fashion after the planning commission rendered their decision.
So that was,
We've been down that road, yeah.
that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
My trouble is we gave you 2 years and we're back with the exact same argument on the other side now. That really boils it down to me. I'm not going to vote for an emergency interim ordinance at this point. But I would keep an open mind on discussing this individual business under whatever it takes to bring it back. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that one of the things I think we might kind of recall from I think fall of 2015 when this came up, there was another business, similar business, I think it was CrossFit Seal Beach, that I think it was Seth Eaker who said, we would love to move into the same kind of area that CrossFit Los Al is. So I think that, there are other businesses that would move in there if the zoning would allow that. So I think, there's other recreational use that has come up, right? I've heard of a hula place, the other CrossFit Recoil, the batting cage, we had that issue that we had kind of gone through. But I want to kind of bring back to something that staff said about the existing business that we've now kind of talked about relative to this moratorium. And you said that they're grandfathered in on the one location. Can you describe how they got to that grandfathered?
Sorry, sure.
Steven said it, so I'd like Steve to answer.
We changed the code after they existed. They existed in one storefront. We changed the code on them. Therefore, they can no longer expand to a second storefront. Therefore, the first storefront is
so how did they come to have a grandfathered on the first storefront that existed before the general plan and the zoning code changed?
Timing.
Yeah.
We changed the code on them.
We changed the code. Okay, so yeah. I'm still not kind of getting the answer.
The general plan and the zoning ordinance was changed to no longer allow recreation uses in the zone that he's in. And therefore his original storefront is grandfathered in.
And then so the illegal expansion, can you explain how it is illegal to occupy in the same building, the same footprint, but just the second storefront? Why is that illegal? I'm curious as to that.
Well, because when you have a use, somebody comes in for a use, their storefront is analyzed to make sure it's consistent with the zoning code.
Okay, so
at the time, that storefront, that single storefront, was
analyzed and deemed to be legal nonconforming.
And then we eventually found out that he expanded into another storefront without approvals, without building permits, without following the rules and regulations of the city of Los Alamitos, and therefore it became a code enforcement issue. And I believe that competing business actually was pretty passionate
that was the one that cited the illegal use of the second storefront. So I'm still kind of not satisfied with the the grandfathered in on the original site. How did that come about?
All recreational businesses that had been approved prior to the change in the general plan and zoning became legal non-conforming uses. So the swim school, the hula place, the gymnastics, the batting cages, all of those were approved before the general plan was changed to prohibit recreational uses in that land use designation and the corresponding zoning changes. So under the city's non-conforming use section, all those businesses get to stay as long as they remain. And as Steve indicated, it turned out that this business had expanded, and by the time it came to the city's attention that they had expanded into the next door space, it was too late for them to apply for a conditional use permit, which is required for recreational uses, was previously required for recreational uses in that area. It was too late for them to apply for that for the expanded use because that use was no longer allowed. And I think the Planning Commission did look at and consider whether this was an expansion which violated the code when they looked at when they first considered it, and they determined that it could not expand into an adjacent space. And when the non-conforming use ordinance was revised, the Planning Commission recommended and the City Council adopted language that specifically provides that you cannot expand into other parts of the same building.
So it's a timing issue as well for this particular business, and so they expanded post adoption of the general plan.
They illegally expanded pre-adoption.
It was illegal because
They didn't apply for a conditional use permit and come in and get the city approvals.
If they would have came to City Hall upon removing that wall and expanding into the storefront, we would have caught it then. But because that person did not come into City Hall upon the expansion of their business license to do any zoning certifications whatsoever, it wasn't caught.
But okay, so just so I'm clear, the expansion happened prior to the adoption of the general plan,
Yes,
right?
I think so.
So that's a fact.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and so the crime here, the failure to follow code is the building owner removes this wall,
No.
or the building owner allows the wall to be removed.
Failure to get a conditional use permit for yes, that on the building side, but more importantly on the zoning side, failure to modify. I'm not sure if the business had a CUP.
So, I'm sorry, say it again?
I said, I'm not sure if this business had a CUP to begin with. We don't have the files in front of us since we weren't specifically talking about this issue tonight, but it was a failure to come in and obtained a conditional use permit for the expanded portion of the business.
Okay, but again, so factually, they occupied the second space illegally prior to the adoption of the general plan. So they were using the space illegally, correct?
Correct.
And then we have no mechanism to allow that illegal use to become legal nonconforming at this point.
Correct. I mean, there was a planning commission decision, and there was an opportunity to review that decision, and city council
Wait. So when you say there's a planning commission decision to not allow a conditional use permit application to go forward?
The planning commission looked at the expansion of the business at the planning commission hearing, if you remember.
Okay, and we recalled, I mean, the mayor had called that for review.
And then it was called up to the city council.
But okay, so the planning commission considered a conditional use permit and disallowed it? For the illegal expansion?
Yeah, we didn't bring the case file because tonight wasn't about the case. I'm sorry.
But it was about, I mean, that was the request that I had, is to not enforce city code like we've not enforced some city codes for some other projects.
Let me try to find it.
Right? So I guess the part I'm really stuck on is that from a timing standpoint, the illegal expansion happened before the adoption of the general plan. So by what the city attorney said is that we've grandfathered in the non-conforming uses as legal non-conforming that was happening before the adoption of the general plan. Is that true?
If I may, David, when did you expand into the second storefront? Before the general plan was adopted.
Okay, so by the city attorney's argument, wouldn't that be legal non-conforming?
No, because it was never a legal use because it didn't have a conditional use permit.
If he had permits prior to that time, you're only grandfathered if you did it right the first time. You're not grandfathered in because the law just changed on you. Because you were legalized at that one time. He never had approval to expand into the second storefront.
Okay, but he had approval to exist in the current footprint.
Yes, and that's what the planning commission and.
So I'd like to see that whole CUP process. I'd like to review it. If you can provide copies of that to me and the rest of the council, I'd certainly appreciate that. I'd like to review how he got the first part, and then the other part, the expansion part. I'd like to ask staff what can be done if he's occupied this prior to the adoption of the general plan. What can we do that just now makes that legal? If he's doing it before the adoption of the general plan, he's using it, albeit illegally, but why can't we retroactively make it legal by going through the process that was then in effect? That's my question. So with that, I'll turn it back to the council.
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we adopt the moratorium as in the staff report.
Second.
The motion would be then to adopt ordinance number 2017-03, an urgency interim ordinance of the City Council of the City of Los Alamitos, California, establishing a temporary moratorium on the enforcement against existing recreational uses in the planned industrial general plan land use area / planned light industrial zoning district, pending the review and possible amendment to the general plan land use element and zoning code to become effective immediately, and this requires a 4/5 vote.
And this is a roll call vote? Oh, I'm sorry.
If adopted, how long would the ordinance be in effect for?
This ordinance is in effect for 45 days. Assuming that there are no changes, we would come back with a new ordinance that would be effective 10 months and 15 days. And if nothing has changed by then, it could be extended by a 1-year ordinance sometime during that 10 months and 15 days. Basically, we'd have to come back, 45 days. I'm not sure if the September meeting is within 45 days or not.
Mm-mm.
Probably not.
Today's August, July 31st.
You need a special meeting then.
Either a special meeting or come back in 2 weeks and extend it.
I feel we shorted the discussion on the individual business because staff was not given the chance to prepare a staff report that should have explained a lot of the issues my colleague was trying to raise. And I don't want to drag it out if the votes aren't going to be there. But I think if we were to go 45 days and come to a decision, we could then have time to get a staff report and understand exactly what happened.
I'm not sure if we can, the timing is off on this as far as being able to concentrate on a single business, correct? Which is why we're discussing this ordinance because this is the only way we could bring it back?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
The September meeting is September the 18th. So either you'll need to have a special meeting or you'll need to put it on the agenda at the August meeting
He did.
on
In
August.
3 weeks.
What,
21st?
14th? No, 21st.
Yeah.
I got it, yeah. I got the whole timeline here.
So,
That's
Mayor,
3 weeks.
I mean, let's think about the message it sends to the business community. So you don't have to follow the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, you come into the city council and you have your item heard. And in this situation, we've been more than compassionate. We gave them another 2 years, and now we're seeing the same thing. Rich, you started out by saying we're the same thing 2 years later. I think, what about all the businesses that actually follow the rules, that when they have to expand, conditional use permit by law is tied to specific address. These are 2 different addresses or one building and multiple storefronts, but any of our industrial light has that type of situation. I don't understand why. I mean, at this point, how do we defend ourselves the next time the businesses come through and they say, hey, look, we just didn't follow the rules. And, but, hey, there's a lot of great people in this community that come and use this business, so you guys should do it. And, that worked on me the first time. I just don't know how it works again. And, 45 days, think about this. We're putting ourselves on a hamster trail here. 45 days, then 15 days, then 60 days, then 20, it just will just keep dragging on. I'm just not sure what the purpose is. And when you look at, I've got the note, that basically laid out the chronology, and the mayor asked a really important question: is did the time pass where the due process, the legal process to be able to adjudicate this issue, come and go? The answer is yes. We're in here under a false pretense, looking at a moratorium, using one business proxy to go and push this thing forward, and now potentially moratorium until we get to an answer that the applicant wants. I just think it sends the wrong message. And I just think, there's just, I don't see why we would want to set this precedent. I really struggle. But it does take 4 votes out of 5, and, I definitely won't be one of those 4, so.
Okay, we have a
I
motion.
guess, sorry, point of
I'm sorry.
religion too, just one broader arguments. The only way I can see support for this moratorium being continued is that we fundamentally agree that we would like recreational uses within the zone, speaking above, beyond an individual business. And if we agree to that point, then we can say, using this case to bring it back at additional time to approve recreational businesses in the zone. So if we are going to do that at some point in the future, which is what I would support if that argument, if that conversation did come up, then that's why I can support the moratorium now. But we shouldn't look as supporting one business, but broadly speaking, recreational within these zones.
So I would kind of add on to what Councilmember Wilson says. So if there are property owners out there that would like to rent their industrial places and a business such as a recreational use like an archery, a batting cage, a exercise business would want to move in, why wouldn't we let that landowner, that landlord, property owner rent to that? I mean, this to me would be, again, like Councilmember Wilson says, do we see that happening in the industrial areas? And again, we've got it all over the city, and that's the part that we've restricted it to an area, in a small area. But perhaps if that footprint were a little bit bigger, we might not have this discussion. But recall again, Seth Eaker from CrossFit Seal Beach said he'd love to move into the industrial area, but he had to be the only place he could find is a retail storefront in a shopping center. And you talk about an incompatible use. It's loud. I don't know how many of you've gone over to the restaurants over there, but it's loud, it's noisy. They're out there doing their thing, and it's a good thing. But I think that let's give our city the chance to have these usages in these areas that might go vacant. And so that's I think, not making it part of the one business, but again, for the landowners, for the businesses that would like to have that use, such as CrossFit Seal Beach or whatever they call themselves now, give them that chance, and let's see where it goes.
Any other comments? You good, Richard?
Trying to figure out how to phrase this, but doesn't that just throw our zoning out the window if we do that? If we say anybody who wants to come into any zone because somebody's willing to rent them a space, doesn't that just make our zoning defenseless?
Subject them to the conditional use permit. It's got to be compatible with that area. So I would say it enhances the use. It's still subjected to the process. And then, the part about illegal, I mean, last month we talked about some usage that that clearly had problems with, I'll say, compliance with code. And so, I mean, I did not ask for a moratorium. I asked for not enforcing the code on this particular use. And it wasn't to be citywide. It really is. We've got somebody here who's got half approval to do what he's doing, and he expanded in the same building illegally. So I guess found out it's prior to the adoption of a general plan. So I'm looking for a way to make that all legal and retroactively. Maybe it's retroactive, but I mean, then we won't really have to go down this moratorium path. So anyways, I'm ready to call for the vote.
Okay, so we have a motion and second for the emergency moratorium. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Kusamoto?
Aye.
Councilmember Murphy?
No.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar?
No.
Mayor Hasselbrink?
No.
Motion failed.
Okay. We're going to go back to.
If I may,
sorry.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kusamoto was asking for staff to come back and do an additional report and investigation. Did the council want staff to do that?
No, if we wanted that, we would have voted on it. We voted on the moratorium and it's over.
Okay. Thank you.
Back to any other further comments from council?
I just had a quick item for bring back for discussion if there's support for it. One was, since we did approve the Traffic Commission's authority to review parking, to see if we can, whether that needs to be a directive from staff or if we need to have a council adopt it, but to look at the parking permit program. It's something that we wanted to tackle, but now they expanded it. Let's give them authority or give them the directive in order to do that. The second is to bring back a discussion at some point this year regarding recreational marijuana businesses being permitted within the city and retail. I'd like to make sure that's on the discussion item that we can speak about soon. And if the council does wish to adopt restrictions with recreational marijuana uses being sold, then at least we have a time to do it before it goes into effect next year.
City manager, can you look at putting those on the agenda for as soon as the next couple of meetings of where they would best fit?
If the council wants to put that on the agenda, we can put that on the agenda. Yeah, the recreational marijuana, and then we've brought back the item on the parking permit being under the purview of the Traffic Commission already. I think we are, well, it wasn't under the purview of the Traffic Commission, but we discussed that as a standalone item before, Stephen, right?
The parking as advisory to the city council is the way the staff report
Correct.
is worded.
Right, but this one, Councilmember Wilson, you're talking specifically about the parking permit program and bringing that.
It was a
back.
discussion that we had, and I think as part of it is that we want that was to be reviewed every, I think, 1 or 2 years, and it's been, I think, longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that we wanted to delegate down to the Traffic Commission, to which we expanded authority tonight. So as part of that, if that's something that you as staff could bring to the Traffic Commission, or if we as a council as a mechanism need to approve that in order to direct them. I'm not sure what the correct response to that be.
Yeah, I think we now have the ability to put it on the Traffic Commission agenda.
Yeah, it's been on our radar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
I would like to single out Danny Barnett for the job he does taking care of the graffiti. I reported to Brett on a Monday after walking in Coyote Creek the night before. And by the end of the day, he had found the graffiti that was on some rocks in the bridge and taken care of it. And I guess he has a reputation for taking it personally, and he's doing an excellent job. I also wanted to congratulate Brett and Corey, who's not here, on the 4th of July. People aren't going to know how much work you did, how close it came to not happening, all the hurdles you overcame to make it happen. And it is a wonderful event. And finally, I'd like to encourage people to join us for the National Night Out, show the support for the police. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to adjourn to closed session. There's 3 topics on that. City Attorney?
Madam Mayor, several closed session items. Number one, conference with legal counsel pending litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 Sub D Sub 1. Case name, the Inland Oversight Committee versus City of Los Alamitos and Catella Property Owner LLC. Case number is on the agenda. Secondly, anticipated litigation pursuant to subsection D2 of the same section. Point's been reached where, in the opinion of the legislative body, on the advice of its legal counsel, based on existing facts and circumstances, there's a significant exposure to litigation against the city, 2 potential cases. And finally, initiation of litigation, subsection D4 of the same section, based on existing facts and circumstances. The city council has decided to initiate, or is deciding whether to initiate litigation, 1 potential case.
Okay. Thank you. We'll adjourn to closed session in memory of longtime resident Tom Rothwell.
Thank you.
Thank you.